Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Always exciting.
This time, we're tackling something I think we've all experienced, but maybe don't totally get how companies decide what to charge for stuff and how much to make in the first place.
Yeah, the classic question, it's all about profit, right?
Right, but the strategies are way more interesting than you'd think. We've got some cool sources this time, not just textbook stuff.
Definitely not.
Real examples from companies everyone knows: Apple, Walmart, even breakfast cereal.
Oh, the cereal one's a good one.
Yeah.
What's fascinating to me is we're going to uncover why bigger can be better in business sometimes.
Okay, so riddle me this. Every business wants to make money. That's Econ 101.
Yeah.
But how do they actually make it happen?
Well, you start with two key ingredients. One is what customers are willing to pay, which economists, we love our fancy terms, call the demand curve.
Right, makes sense.
And then what it costs the company to make the stuff, the cost of production.
All right, so I might think companies would just charge the highest price possible for everything.
Oh, if only it were that easy.
But I have a feeling it's not that simple, right?
You're right. It's way more strategic.
Yeah.
Different companies have totally different approaches. Take Apple versus, say, Tesco, a grocery chain.
Okay, interesting comparison.
Apple focuses on a specific group of people who will pay a premium for the latest iPhone, even if it's expensive. They sell fewer phones, but make a big profit on each one. Tesco's the opposite, wants to sell tons of groceries at lower prices, relying on volume.
So it's like choosing your lane: high price, smaller market, or low price, gotta sell a ton.
Exactly. And you might be surprised that economists actually go out and figure this demand stuff out in real life. There's this study where they estimated the demand curve for, get this, Apple Cinnamon Cheerios.
Wait, seriously, cereal. To understand demand, that's kind of hilarious.
It is,
But
but it works. They look at sales data, how much people bought at different prices, try to find that sweet spot where the price is right to attract enough customers but still make a decent profit.
okay, that makes sense when you explain it like that. But companies can't just be eyeballing this, right? There's got to be some way to analyze it.
That's where isoprofit curves come in. Imagine you're climbing a mountain, want to reach a certain altitude. That's your profit goal. Isoprofit curves are like the contour lines on your map.
Okay, I'm kind of seeing it.
Each line represents a different path, different combos of price and quantity that will all get you to that same profit level.
So one isoprofit curve might show that selling 10,000 units at $5 gives you the same profit as 5,000 units at $10.
Exactly. And by putting these isoprofit curves on a graph with the
Yeah.
demand curve, the company can literally see which combo leads to the highest possible profit, like finding the peak on your map.
It's like a treasure map, but for profit. And speaking of big profits, this is what I'm curious about: why some companies become giants. Walmart, FedEx, Amazon, these companies are massive. There's got to be something more to it than just finding the right price.
Absolutely. This is where economies of scale come in. The idea is as a company gets bigger, they can often produce each item at a lower cost.
So like buying supplies in bulk and getting a discount, I mean, that's something I do at the grocery store.
That's a great everyday example. But it's way beyond that. Imagine a massive pipe carrying water that's like a big company's production process.
Okay, I'm visualizing.
If you double the diameter of the pipe, you carry way more than double the amount of water. Same with production. Doubling your size doesn't mean double your costs. Huge advantage.
So bigger companies can be more efficient. That's a cool way to put it.
Exactly. And this efficiency comes from lots of things. Better technology, better deals with suppliers, even more influence on government policy sometimes.
Wow, so size really does have its perks. But I'm guessing there's a flip side, right? Things can't just keep getting bigger and better forever. What happens when a company gets too big?
You're right to be skeptical. There's definitely a limit. When a company gets too big, it can actually become less efficient. We call that diseconomies of scale. Think about a giant company where communication breaks down, decisions take forever, nobody knows what's going on, it's a mess.
Oh, I've seen that in action. When you need like 5 approvals to get a stapler, it's a nightmare.
Exactly. So it's a balance, maximizing those economies of scale without falling into the diseconomy trap.
Mm.
Now, to really understand how a company navigates this, let's imagine a car company. Let's call it Beautiful Cars.
Okay, I like it. Beautiful cars, making beautiful cars. What kind of costs do they have to think about?
Like any company, you've got fixed costs and variable costs. Fixed costs stay the same no matter how many cars they make. The factory building, the machines, those are fixed.
So those are like the one-time investments.
Yeah, and then variable costs are the ones that change depending on how many cars they're making.
Gotcha.
So like the steel, wages for workers, the energy to run the factory, those go up as they produce more.
Makes sense. But there's also something called opportunity cost. they need to consider, right? I remember that from econ class.
Ah, yes, opportunity cost. Always important. It's the profits they're giving up by investing their money in this specific way instead of something else.
Like, the money for the factory could be earning interest in a bank or invested in something completely different.
Exactly. So it's recognizing that every decision has a trade-off.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got fixed costs, variable costs, and this opportunity cost all swirling around. How do they all come together to figure out the best price for those beautiful cars?
Well, we got to understand how the average cost and the marginal cost change as they ramp up production. Average cost is pretty simple. Total cost divided by the number of cars.
So if it costs them like $1 million to make 10 cars, the average cost is $100,000 per car.
You got it. And marginal cost is the extra cost of producing just one more car. Now, here's where it gets interesting. As production increases, that marginal cost doesn't always behave predictably.
Ooh, I sense a twist.
There is.
Tell me more.
So at the beginning, marginal cost might actually go down as beautiful cars produces more. Think about it. They've already got the factory, the workers. Those costs are fixed, right?
Yeah, they're set.
So making a few extra cars might not add much extra cost. They're already paying for the space, the people.
That makes sense. But it can't stay that way forever, can it?
Nope, you're absolutely right. Eventually, they'll hit a point where those marginal costs start climbing again. Maybe they need to hire more workers, paid overtime, buy more materials, things like that.
So it's like this dance between efficiency and limitations. At some point, beautiful cars hits those limitations and it starts costing more to make each additional car.
Precisely.
Ah.
Figuring out where that tipping point is where marginal cost starts going up, that's super important for profit. It's about balancing those costs with, how much people are actually willing to pay.
Which brings us back to that demand curve. How much are people willing to shell out for one of these beautiful cars?
Exactly. And here's where it gets even more interesting. As we move along the demand curve, we see that as the price of the car goes up, the quantity demanded, how many people want to buy it, goes down.
Okay, makes sense. Basic supply and demand, right?
Yeah. But I feel like we're missing a piece here. How do we connect this demand curve to the cost side of things?
That's a good question. It feels like they're separate right now.
They are, and that's where marginal revenue comes in. This is all about the extra revenue beautiful cars gets from selling just one more car.
Okay, I think I get that. But you said there's a twist with this too, right?
There is. To sell that extra car, they might have to lower the price, not just for that one car, but for all the cars.
Ah, I see. So they gain some revenue from selling one more, but they lose a bit on all the others they could have sold at the higher price.
Exactly. It's not just about selling more. It's about finding that sweet spot where the extra revenue from that one more car outweighs what you lose by lowering the price.
Makes sense.
And as they produce more and more, they might have to lower the price so much that the marginal revenue actually becomes negative.
Wait, negative. So they'd be losing money by selling more cars. That doesn't seem right.
It's a crucial point. They've got to find the level of production where each extra car is still adding to their profit. To see this, let's go back to those isoprofit curves. Remember, each one represents a different combo of price and quantity that gives beautiful cars the same profit.
Right, like they're trying to climb to the highest peak on their profit mountain.
Exactly. Each curve is a different path up. To maximize profit, they want to find the highest isoprofit curve that still touches the demand curve.
So it's about finding that perfect balance between price and a quantity.
Yes. And this is where it gets a little technical, but stick with me. The point where the isoprofit curve just touches the demand curve is called a tangency point.
Tangency. Oh, I vaguely remember that word from geometry class.
Well, it's relevant here, too. The slope of the isoprofit curve at that tangency point tells us how much beautiful cars has to lower their price to sell one more car while keeping their profit the same. Economists call this the marginal rate of transformation, or MRT.
So it's the trade-off they're making, price versus quantity, to stay on that same profit level.
Exactly. Now, the slope of the demand curve at that same point tells us how much customers are willing to pay for that extra car. That's the marginal rate of substitution, MRS.
It's like how much they value that extra car compared to the price, right?
Yes. And here's the cool part. At that profit-maximizing tangency point, the MRT and the MRS are equal.
Whoa. So Beautiful Cars is lowering the price by the exact amount that customers are willing to pay less? It's like a perfect match.
Precisely. Beautiful Cars gives up as much in price as customers are willing to give up. That's the sweet spot. Both the company and the customer feel like they're getting a good deal.
This is all starting to click for me now. But do companies actually go through all this analysis with curves and slopes and stuff? Seems like a lot of work.
Maybe they're not drawing graphs, but the ideas are there. They're looking at sales data, costs, trying to find that profit sweet spot, even if they don't call it MRT or MRS.
It's more like a constant experiment, right? Trying to find the balance.
You could say that.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. The market changes. What people want changes. Unexpected stuff happens. Companies have to adapt all the time.
Right, like if the price of steel goes way up suddenly, Beautiful Cars has to rethink everything.
Exactly. So the theory is important, but the real world is way more complex.
Okay, so they figured out how to maximize profit with those curves. But is there another way to think about this? Maybe something using that marginal revenue idea.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, looking at marginal revenue can give us an even more direct way to find that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so marginal revenue, it's the extra money they make from selling one more car, right?
Right, more.
But remember, to sell that extra car, Beautiful Cars might have to lower the price for all the cars they sell.
Yeah. So they gain some, lose some. It's a trade-off.
Exactly. And they keep making more cars, they lower the price more, and eventually
Yeah.
their marginal revenue could even become negative.
Negative, meaning they're losing money by selling more. I still don't quite get how that works.
It seems weird, but that's why finding the right production level is so important.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that graph we were talking about. Quantity of cars on one axis, price on the other.
Okay, got it. What else goes on the graph?
We've got our demand curve, slopes downward, shows how much people are willing to pay at each quantity, and then our marginal cost curve, sloping up. Those increasing costs as Beautiful Cars makes more cars.
Okay, picturing it. Demand goes down as price goes up. Cost goes up as they make more. Makes sense.
Now, add in the marginal revenue curve.
Okay.
It also slopes down, but even more steeply than demand.
Yeah.
And it actually goes below zero eventually.
3 curves. I'm trying to keep it all straight in my head. How does this help Beautiful Cars find that profit sweet spot?
Okay, here's the key. The point where the marginal cost curve crosses the marginal revenue curve. That's where profits are maximized.
That intersection. Why there?
Because at that point, they're making the exact number of cars where the extra cost of making one more their marginal cost is balanced by the extra revenue they get from selling it, the marginal revenue.
Ah, okay. Like a seesaw, marginal cost on one side, marginal revenue on the other.
Perfect analogy. And if they make more cars than that, their marginal cost will be higher than their marginal revenue, meaning they're losing money on each extra car.
So it's a clear signal cost higher than revenue, got to scale back.
Exactly. And remember, profit is just total revenue minus total cost. So when marginal revenue is higher than marginal cost, they're adding more to their revenue than their cost, profit's going up. But as soon as marginal revenue dips below marginal cost, profit shrinks.
That point on the graph isn't just balancing things out. It's showing them where they make the absolute most money.
That's the power of this stuff.
Yeah.
Marginal revenue helps them be as profitable as possible. Not just profitable, but most profitable.
My mind is blown. We went from like basic supply and demand to this whole other level.
I know, it's cool, right?
It's like we got a peek behind the curtain of how businesses actually make decisions.
And we've only scratched the surface. There's so much more to economics. Game theory, different market structures, behavioral economics.
So much to learn. But I think we've given everyone a lot to think about today. Now they can look at companies and kind of understand the forces behind those prices, those products.
Totally. It's all about being informed, thinking critically about the choices we make. As consumers, as business people, everyone.
Great point. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Until next time, keep learning and stay curious.